You keep counting the years you feel behind. Everyone else looks finished. The career, the confidence, the sense that they know exactly who they are. And you still feel like a draft, still half-written, still waiting for a final version of yourself to show up. Here is the part almost no one says out loud. That feeling is not a flaw in your timeline. It is a signal. Carl Jung spent decades studying people who could not force themselves to bloom early, no matter how hard the world pushed them, no matter how many deadlines they missed by everyone else's clock. And he found something the self-help industry still refuses to admit. Some minds are not built to arrive on schedule. They are built to arrive intact. Ignore this signal and you will spend another year mistaking depth for delay. You will keep apologizing for a maturity nobody around you is ready to receive. And that mistake costs you the one thing you cannot buy back later. By the end of this video you will know exactly why you were never late. You were early. Just for a different life. One almost nobody around you is living yet. Let's name the lie first. The lie says, if you have not arrived by a certain age, you failed. If you are still figuring it out at 30, 40, 50, something in you is broken. Society sells you a straight line. Birth, performance, success, applause, repeat. Hit the marks in order, on time, and you're rewarded. Miss them and you're quietly filed under, still trying to figure it out. But real psychological growth does not move in a straight line. It spirals. It circles back to the same question again and again, going a little deeper each time, until something finally integrates and holds. Jung called this process individuation. And he was blunt about one detail almost nobody wants to hear. Becoming yourself is not comfortable and it is almost never on time. It ignores deadlines. It ignores comparison. It ignores everyone standing at the finish line, checking their watch on your behalf. Here is the deeper shift hiding underneath all of it. The moment you stop needing people to confirm that you exist, that you matter, that you're doing it right, they lose the exact power they used to have over you. Not because you push them away. Because you no longer need them close enough to hurt you. Read that again. This video walks you through 7 psychological signs, drawn entirely from Carl Jung's analytical psychology, that prove your delay was never a malfunction. It was a design. 7 signs that you were built to flourish late, and to stay untouchable while you wait for it. Jung spent years treating people in the second half of life. Successful people. Married, employed, respected, checking every box society handed them. And empty. He noticed something strange, something that contradicted everything his profession assumed. The patients who struggled hardest were not the ones who failed to adapt to society. They were the ones who adapted too well, too soon. They built an entire life around what was expected of them before they knew who they actually were underneath it. Jung called the process of becoming a whole, distinct self-individuation. And he made a claim that still unsettles people who want a shortcut. Individuation does not reward speed. It punishes it. Conform at 20, and you spend your 40s quietly unlearning a stranger's life, one you built with your own hands and someone else's blueprint. Resist conforming at 20, uncomfortable as that resistance feels at the time, and you spend your 40s building something that was actually yours from the foundation up. Think about the years you were told you were behind. The job you didn't take even though it made sense on paper. The relationship you walked away from, because something in you refused to perform a contentment you didn't actually feel. The path everyone assumed you'd follow that you quietly, stubbornly did not follow. That was not failure. That was your psyche protecting its own foundation from being poured over someone else's plans. You were not slow. You were refusing to build on sand, even when sand was the only material anyone handed you. Here is the mechanism underneath it. Every time you say yes to a role you don't actually inhabit, a parent's expectation, a partner's timeline, a culture's checklist, you delay your own individuation by exactly that much. The self that should be forming gets postponed, buried under a performance that looks convincing from the outside and feels hollow from the inside. Jung's patients paid for that delay later, usually around midlife, when the performance finally collapsed under its own weight, and there was no one underneath it. No self left to catch them. You paid earlier and in smaller, quieter installments. You paid in judgment, in comparison, in every relative who asked, gently or not so gently, when you'd finally figure it out. But you kept something they never had to fight for because they never noticed they traded it away. An unbuilt self, still available to be built correctly on your own schedule instead of theirs. Ask yourself honestly, how many of the late milestones in your life were actually late? Or were you simply refusing to hit them on someone else's countdown? How many years did you spend quietly disqualifying yourself from a race you never agreed to enter in the first place? Individuation is not a reward for good behavior. It is not handed out for showing up on time. It is built, slowly, out of every moment you chose the harder, slower, truer option over the fast, easy, borrowed one. That is sign one. And it points straight at something stranger, something buried in how your mind actually processes the world. A difference almost everyone around you mistakes for slowness. It is the exact opposite. Here is what that difference actually is. In Jung's model of psychological types, some minds are dominated by an introverted function, introverted thinking, introverted intuition. That means the real work happens inside, in private, long before it ever reaches the outside world in a form anyone else can evaluate. An extrovert mind processes out loud. It talks through the idea, tests it in public, adjusts in real time in front of other people, and gets rewarded fast because the world can see the process happening and can applaud it while it's still unfinished. An introverted-dominant mind does something almost invisible from the outside. It gathers. It tests silently against itself over and over. It builds an entire structure in the dark, checking every load-bearing wall before anyone is allowed to walk through it, and only releases the finished version once it can survive contact with the world. That is why you built entire ideas, entire plans, entire versions of yourself in your head, sometimes for years, long before anyone saw a single visible brick of it. To an outside observer, nothing was happening. You looked stuck. You looked quiet, maybe even passive. To you, everything was happening. Just underground, out of anyone's sight line. This is not a deficiency, whatever anyone implied about it. It is architecture. A skyscraper takes longer to appear above ground than a tent does, because most of its structure gets buried first, holding weight nobody can see yet and nobody thinks to thank it for. Extrovert timelines reward the tent. Fast, visible, applauded immediately, gone by the next storm. Introverted timelines build the skyscraper. Slow, invisible, mocked right up until the moment it outlasts everything standing next to it. You were never behind the extrovert timeline. Here is the part worth sitting with: you were never running it in the first place. And once you stop measuring your foundation against someone else's tent, comparing your slow, buried process to their fast, visible one, you stop needing their applause to know you're building something real. That single shift removes a kind of leash you didn't know you were wearing. Because the moment their opinion stops being the ruler you measure yourself against, they lose the exact lever they used to move you with a raised eyebrow or a well-timed question about your plans. Notice how often you've heard some version of "you think too much," or "just go with your gut, don't overanalyze it." That advice was written for a different kind of mind. For yours, thinking deeply, I ask the gut. The depth is not standing between you and the answer. It is how the answer gets built in the first place. So the next time someone rushes you toward a decision you can feel isn't finished yet, remember this: you are not stalling. You are still pouring the foundation, and foundations do not set on someone else's deadline. There is a third sign hiding further back in your childhood, something you quietly refused to do that almost everyone else did without a second thought. We come back to exactly what that was in a moment. Quick pause here because what comes next changes the entire shape of this video. If any of this is landing so far, hit subscribe now because the signs still ahead get more specific and more uncomfortable in the best possible way. Here is a line worth writing down before we continue, one you can come back to on the days this feels heaviest. You do not need to be understood on someone else's schedule to be real. Say that back to yourself the next time someone asks, gently or not, why you're still figuring it out. You are not behind them. You were simply never running their race, and the sooner you stop checking their scoreboard, the sooner there stops mattering to you at all. Now, back to what you refused to do as a child, long before you had the language to explain why. Picture a school stage. Every child gets handed a role before they're old enough to choose one for themselves. Cheerful, easygoing, good at sports, low maintenance, quiet. Most learn their lines fast. By adolescence, the role has fused with the skin. They can no longer find the seam between the performance and the person. Jung had a name for that role. He called it the persona, the mask built to negotiate with the outside world. Not a lie exactly. Every person needs one to function in society. The danger, Jung was careful to say, is not wearing a persona. The danger is forgetting you're wearing one at all. Something in you never forgot. Close your eyes for a second and picture the family dinner table you grew up at. Someone asks you to perform a feeling you don't have gratitude you didn't feel, excitement about a plan you dreaded, calm about something that terrified you. Most kids learn to produce the requested face on command. Something in you hesitated every time, just long enough for someone to notice. At the time, that hesitation felt like a defect. It cost you the easy affection that comes from being effortlessly agreeable, the specific comfort of blending seamlessly into what a room expected. Here is the mechanism underneath it. Every time a persona fuses completely with the person wearing it, the fit gets smoother now, and the bill comes due later when the mask has hardened and there is no longer anyone soft enough underneath to remove it. Jung saw this constantly in his consulting room. Adults who had performed an expected role so completely for so long that taking it off felt like flaying their own skin. You kept a gap. A small, uncomfortable space between the mask and the face underneath it, one that never fully closed no matter how much easier closing it would have made your life. That gap was expensive when you were young. It got you left out, misread, called difficult by people who actually meant unpredictable, too much, or simply not finished performing yet. Maybe you still remember the exact moment someone called you that. The tone. The room. How small it made you feel to be right about something and still be treated like the problem. But that same gap is the only reason there is still a face left under the mask at all. Think about the version of yourself people currently expect you to perform. At work, at family gatherings, in the group chat that never quite fits who you've become. Now notice how much of you sits outside that performance, unclaimed, uncast. That surplus, the part that never got absorbed into the role, was never a flaw. It is the raw material for something Jung considered the most avoided work in the entire process of growing up. Work most people spend their whole lives finding new ways to postpone. Jung called it shadow work, the slow, uncomfortable process of confronting the parts of yourself you were taught to hide, deny, or disown entirely. Anger you weren't allowed to show as a child. Ambition that seemed too selfish to admit out loud. Grief nobody gave you permission or space to finish. Most people never do this work, not really. They bury the shadow instead and spend a lifetime projecting it onto other people, the coworker who triggers them out of nowhere, the family member they can't stand for reasons they can't fully articulate, the stranger online who makes their blood boil over something oddly specific. Jung's warning was blunt, and it has not aged at all. What you do not confront in yourself, you will meet in someone else, and you will hate them for carrying, in plain view, exactly what you refuse to look at in private. Now think about your own years that looked like nothing from the outside. The relationship you kept examining instead of simply moving on the way everyone advised. The mistake you replayed over and over until you finally fully understood it instead of just regretting it. The version of yourself you had to sit with, alone, in some uncomfortable room before you could stand to be around other people again without performing. From the outside that looked like standing still. Maybe it even looked like wasted time to people who love a tidy narrative. From the inside that was integration. That was you doing, quietly and without applause, the exact work most people spend their whole lives avoiding by staying endlessly, frantically busy instead. Here is the mechanism. Every unexamined part of the self keeps operating in the dark, controlling reactions, relationships, and choices without ever asking permission. Every examined part gets folded back into a whole person, someone who no longer gets hijacked by a reaction they don't understand and can't explain to anyone else. You were not stagnant during those years. You were assembling the parts of yourself that other people are still, right now, projecting onto strangers who did nothing to deserve it. And that single difference is a large part of why almost nothing anyone says about you can move you the way it used to. Think of it this way. Two people can spend the same 5 years. One spends them running from every uncomfortable feeling, chasing distraction, chasing the next achievement to avoid sitting still with themselves. The other spends those same 5 years sitting with exactly what the first person is running from. On paper, at year 5, the first person often looks further ahead. More promotions, more photos, more evidence of a life in motion. But only one of them is carrying less. Only one of them stopped feeding the shadow they used to project onto everyone around them. There is one more layer to this, and it has to do with a question almost nobody asks correctly. When, exactly, is a person actually supposed to finish becoming themselves? Jung split adult life into two distinct halves, and almost nobody talks about the second one correctly or at all. The first half is about establishing yourself in the outer world. Career, relationships, reputation, a stable place inside the collective. This is necessary work. Useful work. Nobody is arguing otherwise. The second half is about something the first half cannot prepare you for, no matter how well you played it. Turning inward and finally becoming a full, individuated self, separate from every role you spent the first half performing for other people's benefit. Jung noticed that the people who struggled most in midlife were the ones who never made that turn inward. They optimized endlessly for the first half scoreboard, and had nothing left, no muscle, no map, to build the second half with when it finally arrived uninvited. Here is what almost nobody says clearly about this. Some people start turning toward the second half early, sometimes decades early. Not because they skipped the first half's tasks entirely, but because they were never fully willing to define themselves only by them even while doing them. If you have always felt slightly out of step with people your own age, chasing titles you didn't fully want, chasing timelines that never quite fit, chasing the next visible milestone because it was expected rather than desired, this is why. Part of you was already doing second half work, quietly, in the background, while everyone around you was still fully, exclusively occupied with the first. That is not falling behind. That is running two different clocks at once, and refusing to pretend for anyone's comfort that they're the same clock. The reward for that refusal is quiet, and it will never show up on a resume or a highlight reel. It shows up as a kind of stability nobody can easily shake because you already did, early and without an audience, the interior work most people postpone until a crisis in their 40s or 50s finally forces it on them. You did the hard part before the emergency required it. Picture two calendars hanging side by side. One is the calendar everyone can see, the one measured in job titles and relationship statuses and how your life looks from the outside at a given age. The other is invisible, measured only in how much of yourself you have actually met, examined and made peace with. Most people only ever look at the first calendar. You have been quietly living by the second one, and the second one does not care what year it is on the first. That single fact is about to explain something you have probably felt your entire life, in some vague, unnamed way but never had the language to describe until now, a reaction inside you that seems to arrive before you do. Try a small experiment. Picture someone raising their voice at you over something minor, a late reply, a forgotten dish, a scheduling mix-up. Some people snap back instantly, disproportionately, as if a switch got thrown somewhere behind their ribs. Where does that switch come from? Not from the sentence they just heard. From somewhere much older. Jung called it a complex, a cluster of memories, emotions and beliefs, usually formed early, that behaves like a semi-independent personality living inside the larger one. It has its own logic, its own voice, and when something brushes against it, the complex does not ask permission. It simply takes the wheel. Most complexes form around approval. A parent whose love arrived with conditions attached. A childhood room where being noticed felt dangerous rather than safe. A house where the calmest position available was invisible. And for years, without knowing it, an adult keeps obeying a committee that was elected decades earlier, by people who are no longer even in the building. You know exactly what it feels like when a complex is driving. Your reaction is bigger than the trigger deserved. Your voice doesn't sound like the voice you use anywhere else. And some quiet part of you watching from a slight distance thinks, that wasn't really about this. Maybe you felt it in traffic. In a group chat. In the half second before you sent a message you couldn't unsend. That heat that arrives before thought does. That's the complex, not you. Here is what changed for you at some point without ceremony or announcement. The complex built around needing approval started losing its grip. Not because you defeated it in one dramatic confrontation. Because you began noticing it early enough to name it, and Jung was specific about this mechanism. A complex loses most of its unconscious power at the exact moment it gets named and brought into conscious awareness. That is why you stopped needing the room's permission before making a decision. Not arrogance. Recognition. You caught the string before it finished pulling you. Most people never catch it at all. They spend an entire life being moved by a hand they never once turn around to look at, mistaking the complex's old, borrowed voice for their own personality. I've just always been like this, they say, never asking who taught them to be like that in the first place. You started asking the harder question instead. Is this actually me reacting, or is this the 7-year-old still trying to get picked first? That single distinction is the entire difference between a life that is driven and a life that is chosen. And it points straight toward the deepest structure in Jung's whole model of the psyche. The one part of you that was never, even for a second, following anyone else's script. Jung used the word self, capital S, for something distinct from your everyday personality. not who you perform for others, not even who you privately think you are on your better days. The self is the whole, integrated psyche, the actual center you are quietly, slowly built to become, if the process is ever allowed to finish. Jung was explicit about one detail that unsettles anyone who wants a fixed schedule for their own becoming. The self does not emerge on request. It emerges only once enough of the personality has been examined, integrated, and reconciled with itself, and not one moment before that threshold is crossed. You cannot force it early with achievement, no matter how impressive the achievement looks on paper. You cannot fake it with confidence, no matter how convincing the performance. You cannot borrow it from someone else's timeline, no matter how much you admire the shape of their life. This is the part that reframes everything you have heard so far in this video. Every sign up to now, the refusal to conform, the introverted depth, the self you kept outside the mask, the shadow work, the second half turn, the complex you finally named, all of it was preparation. All of it was the personality slowly, patiently clearing space for the self to actually arrive and take up residence. Most people never clear that space at all. They spend an entire lifetime performing a personality that gets increasingly polished with age, while the self stays buried underneath it, unclaimed, unmet, waiting for an invitation that never comes. You have been doing something rarer and harder, and almost completely invisible from the outside looking in. You have been clearing the space, one refusal, one uncomfortable year, one honest confrontation at a time. That is why you could not force yourself to bloom on the group schedule, no matter how hard you tried in your 20s. The group was applauding personalities. You were quietly, stubbornly building the thing underneath the personality. Here is the final, uncomfortable truth Jung leaves us with, and it is worth sitting with fully. The self, once it actually arrives, does not need anyone's permission to exist. It does not check whether the room approves first. It does not wait patiently for consensus before showing up. It simply is. And nothing outside of you can touch that fact because nothing outside of you built it in the first place. That is the exact moment people lose their power over you completely, finally, and for good. Not when you argue with them. Not when you defend yourself point by point. The moment you no longer need their verdict to know, quietly and completely, exactly who you are. This is why the timing never made sense to anyone watching from the outside. They were tracking a personality on a public schedule. You were tracking a self on a private one, and private schedules do not announce themselves in advance. They only announce themselves once they arrive. So if you are still waiting, still feeling behind, still comparing your unfinished chapters to someone else's highlight reel, understand what is actually happening underneath the discomfort. You are not stuck. You are close. The self only feels furthest away right before it finishes assembling itself. Here is the whole video, compressed into one image. A tree does not apologize for the years it spends underground, building roots nobody can see and nobody applauds. It does not compare its timeline to the weeds that sprang up overnight in the same soil, grew fast, looked impressive for a season, and died just as fast as they appeared. The tree grows exactly as slow as it actually needs to grow, on a timeline nothing outside it controls, and then it quietly outlasts everything standing next to it. You have two options now and only two. Keep measuring yourself by a calendar that was built for weeds, for fast growth, for visible, early, forgettable success. Or accept fully that you were built like the tree, and stop apologizing for the years spent underground doing work nobody could see. The choice is not comfortable and it will not stay optional forever. Every year you spend still asking the crowd for a verdict on your life is a year you delay becoming the one thing no one else gets a vote on, yourself whole and finally on your own schedule. If this reframed even 1 year you used to quietly call wasted, send it to someone who is still, right now, counting the years they feel behind. 7 signs. One thread running through all of them. Every year that looked like delay was actually depth, doing its quiet, unglamorous, necessary work below the surface, where no one was watching and no one needed to be. You do not owe anyone an explanation for how long your roots took. You do not owe the crowd a timeline, and you do not owe them a verdict on whether you're there yet. Somewhere, right now, a younger version of you is still waiting for permission to exist on your own schedule. Give it to them. They've been waiting long enough. You were never late. You were building roots the entire time.